Howdy, guys, and welcome to night 84 of Big Brother Season 23's Overnight Feeds Recaps. And welcome to Cliff Notes from outside the Big Brother house. And welcome to finale night as well. We're finally here. Tonight's the night. Final competition, and then either Xavier or Azah will be picking who to sit next to them as they try to convince the jury to award them not just $500,000, $750,000 as season 23's Big Brother champion. All right, I'm ready for tonight. I'm ready to see how this all plays out, see who walks out the door. I kind of think I know who I believe deserves to win that $750,000, but that doesn't mean it's going to happen. We shall find out this evening. So where are we with regards to the overnight feeds? What happened last night? We had a lot of conversations. We had a lot of campaigns, pitches, arguing, crying. But just as an advance notice, y'all, most of that happened early in the evening. The house guests went to bed rather early. So rather than just covering overnight, I'm going to be covering what happened yesterday as well. So please understand that. If I just covered what happened overnight, it'd be a pretty quick conversation. But we did have a few of the daytime conversations there worth talking about as well. So I'm going to back up just a little bit farther as we talk about what happened the last 24 hours or so. So let's start off. Azah and Xavier talking. Now, Azah is saying that, look, if I only cared about myself and the money, then I'd be taking Big D to a final two if I won the final competition. And I'd be trying to convince you, Xavier, to take me to the final two if you won the competition. Yeah, that's exactly how you're supposed to be doing it, Azah. That's what we as viewers expect. You're supposed to be doing everything possible to fight for the title at the very end. That's why most people come into the house. So yeah, you're right. That's what you should be doing if you care about the money and about winning. But instead, Azah is again saying that she just doesn't want Xavier finishing in third place, which means that she's basically saying that if I win, I want to take you instead of Big D so that you don't finish in third place. So she's saying, I don't want you to finish in third place, Xavier. And in addition to that, I really think that if you win tonight's competition, you need to honor your deal. You need to take Big D with you instead of me. And I'm fine with that if you do that. All right. Just a side note to casting. If any of y'all are watching this casting next season, please give us 16 players who want to win Big Brother. I get it. I understand where Oz is coming from and all that, but I want to see people who fight to the very end to win the grand title. So next season, please. All right. We've got after that conversation, Azah and Big D are back to talking to each other. Remember, the day before, Big D said, that's it. I'm not talking to Azah anymore. We're through with each other. Well, that lasted, I don't know, half a day or so, but they're talking to each other again. Again, it's repeating the idea. Azah's repeating to Big D this idea that she doesn't want Xavier in third and that she is fine with Xavier taking Big D. So exactly the same thing. She's honest. I mean, she's telling Big D exactly what she told Xavier as well. And Big D has suggested to Azah that her emotions about Xavier are getting in her way. And Azah at that point is then talking about saying, look, it's not about picking a man over a friend. It's not why I'm doing it. It's just that Xavier deserves better than third place. I agree. I don't disagree with that whatsoever, Azah. But you need to be taking who you think you can beat. It's not about who deserves what. It's about who can win and who can't. All right, Big D is upset and saying, look, I'm hurt that Azah, that you're saying that Xavier deserves the win more than me. Really? Okay, I call Big D the eternal optimist, the incredibly overconfident person, I say. Yeah, he's upset that she would even dare to say that Xavier maybe would deserve to come in second or first over Big D. And with that, Big D goes into another long talk about everything he did in the house, how much he did to protect her, how he's just run this game so far, and it just wouldn't be right for him to go home in third place either. He also is talking about how shocked the jury is going to be if he walks out as the final juror. And I do kind of agree with Big D on this. If the jury, especially if the jury discovers that Azah won the final competition and she picked Xavier to stay over Big D, yeah, they're going to be shocked. At that point, just go ahead and write Xavier the check right there and then, because Xavier is going in the argument be able to say, look, even when Azah was in control, I convinced her to take me, the big threat, over Big D, who didn't win anything and posed no threat whatsoever. If Azah does that, yes, the jury is going to be incredibly shocked. All the viewers at home are going to be incredibly shocked. Although at this point in time, should we really be shocked by anything that's happening in this house this season? Big D is saying his whole purpose in the game has been to protect Azah, and that the jury knows that. And that's another reason they're going to be shocked. They know that he's been doing nothing other than protecting Azah throughout this whole game. If that was true, he should have made that more clear and agonized less last week when Azah was on the block next to Kyland. If it was all about protecting her, he sure spent a lot of time talking about what a horrible, terrible, difficult decision it was to send Kyland out the door over Azah. But he cares all about her now, right? Azah is again mentioning America's favorite player, America's favorite house guest. And Big D saying, look, I'm not guaranteed to win that, so don't keep throwing that out there. I don't know that I'm going to win that. Does Big D even make the top 3 of America's favorite tonight? That could be a nasty surprise for him. I'm thinking Derek X, Tiffany, Hannah, Claire, maybe. I mean, there's several people I could see coming in as a top 3 over Big D. So he may be in for quite the surprise. Let's see how the America favorite plays out, and let's watch who the cameras are on and who gets surprised by that. All right, Big D is talking about how much her decision to take Xavier is killing him, how he doesn't know how he will ever recover from such betrayal, how he's going to recover from this. All right, Big D, there are multiple pawns over in the jury house right now who can help you recover from such betrayals, because they experienced it as well this year. So you will be in good company, and you can talk to some of those other people about how you recover from such big brother typical actions. All right, he's also saying, Big D is also saying that Azah knew he had a final 2 with Xavier, so she should be cool with the idea that Big D would have taken Xavier to final 2 instead of her. And she should know that it's not personal. It's just the deal. That's all it was, Azah. Well, if you thought Azah was so cool with that, you probably should have you could have told her, I don't know, while she was HOH, while she had a little power in the house. But he didn't mention it back then. He only waited until after they had the final 3 and things were a little progressed further down the road, and her power had gone away. There's just a bunch of empty words from Big D. I understand he's pitching. He's trying to do what he can to survive in the house. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of things he's saying to her that he doesn't expect necessarily in return. All right, Azah is again saying how Big D has just been putting her down and hurting her during the last few weeks. Big D is saying that, look, you told me, Azah, to be truthful, but now I'm realizing that I really need to ease up on these truthful statements. Man, he just doesn't know when to stop. But he mentioned that. He's saying he's so blunt with her because she is his friend. I think sometimes he's so blunt with her because he doesn't really take in her feelings into complete and total consideration. All right, Big D is saying his actions speak louder than words, and he was always there for her when he had the power. Didn't you only have power a single time, Big D? And even then, you went on and on about how hard a decision it was to save Azah over Kyland. And even then, you were only given the power after promising to protect Azah. So yeah, I guess you did protect her when you had the power. If you're talking actions and not words, but words do mean something. Big D's saying he feels played and betrayed. Well, welcome to Big Brother. You think you were the only house guest feeling played and betrayed this season? I think not. Big D saying he wanted good people at the end, and even if she didn't do much, he still kind of wanted to bring her as far as he could. He just keeps putting his foot in his mouth. I don't mean this to be just an attack session on Big D, and I know I'm throwing out a few things here or there, but Big D has his own perceptions. They don't always align with what a lot of the rest of us think and see. All right, eventually Big D does kind of apologize. He says he's sorry for hurting her, but he's not sorry for doing all the moves he did to protect her and them, that he did what he had to do, and he apologizes if it hurt her, but it is what it is. But then he immediately goes into explaining again why he deserves to go forward, and why her cutting him would be such a personal decision, and how shocked people are going to be if she does something like that. And at that point, Big D starts crying a little bit. It's emotional. It is stressful. And as much as I rag on everyone in the house sometimes about some of the decisions, it is a stressful. We're talking $750,000. So I do have some sympathy and understanding and empathy with everyone in there. And Big D is crying. He's as stressed out as they come. So he's crying a little bit. Azah responds. She's saying, look, I understand how you feel, but I'm still hurt by you saying that you would take Xavier over me to final two. That hurt, Big D, when you said that. And they start a huge discussion about whether what he said was based on him having the deal with Xavier or who his personal preference would be. And Big D saying, look, I misunderstood. If you're talking about who I'd rather take, it's always going to be you, Azah. But I'm talking about just because I had the deal. And she's saying, well, outside the deal, who would you have taken? He said, well, outside the deal, I would have taken you. And so it's all them trying to say it was a misunderstanding and everything. But she was hurt by it, and she's still hurt by it, and she still holds a grudge for it. Big D is saying he just wasn't expecting her to say she would take Xavier when she mentioned that day before yesterday. And he's saying, words hurt, Azah. When you say something like that, words hurt. Maybe he should have thought of that when he used words to tell Azah that he would have taken Xavier instead of her to a final two. Yeah, words can hurt. They absolutely can hurt. And on with the same arguments. And I eventually just, the same old. Why he deserves to be there, why she's hurt, why it's not personal, why it is personal, blah, 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 blah. All right. Eventually we got Big D saying in the end of the conversation, saying there are 3 people still in the house that deserve to win Big Brother. Well, maybe just one. But he's saying there's 3 of us that still deserve to win. And he's arguing that, look, for both you and Xavier, you ought to be sitting next to me. If you want to win, you need to be sitting next to me. It makes the most logical sense for that to be the case, Azah. And I kind of agree with that. Later in the evening, we've got a great little shout out. Big D has finally relaxed a little bit, at least for a little while. And he's yelling out to both of them, saying, take the fat man. If you want to win $750,000, take the fat man to the final two. Y'all both, either one of y'all are going to beat me. So take the big guy. That's probably the argument he needs to be making throughout the whole thing. Not so serious, not so woe is me, but a lot more lightheartedness while driving home the point at the same time. Eventually the conversation ends. And Big D goes to Xavier and he rehashes the entire conversation, talking about how unfair it is, Azah is, after he did so much for her. He's putting his own spin on it, but he spills everything to Xavier, and Xavier sits there and listens again. At one point, and this is later, this is after the conversation, but at one point, Xavier's sitting there and looks to the cameras and shouts, "Hey, live feeders, if you're watching, we're bored." Yeah, Xavier, from the live feeders, we're bored too. I'm ready for us to wrap this season up. All 3 house guests eventually end up in the living room last night. They're talking about past game moves, the fellow house guests, some of the events that happened. They're talking about Brittany and her feeling like other people were targeted when it was her. Just a whole bunch of rehashing of past moments in the house. But Azah's talking about how much she wishes she'd been kept more in the loop about what the cookout was up to. And Big D is saying that, hey, look, me and Xavier, we were making all the moves. We didn't mean to exclude you. We just were busy making all the moves. And, sorry if you felt excluded. They were making all the moves. Big D says he and Xavier created the master plan of the Cookout Alliance, but they decided to let Tiffany take credit for it. That's nice of him. If Big D somehow makes it to the final two, I'd love for him to say something like that in front of the jury, and hopefully he does so before Tiffany gets to ask her questions to the final two. So Big D was behind it all along with Xavier, but they decided to let Tiffany take credit. We've got the night devolves a little bit into Big D in one room playing cards with himself. Azah and Xavier in another room cuddling, closely cuddling, under the blanket, cuddling and everything. And nothing more than just cuddling, but once more, they're spending a lot of time together trying to cement those bonds right before finale night. We get another quick pitch from Big D to Azah where he says he's at her mercy. It ends with a hug and more tears from Big D, and they kind of call it an evening at that point. And then finally, we've got Azah and Xavier talking. Azah saying, look, I know my family might be screaming at the TV right now about everything I'm doing, decisions I'm making. But I also know that Big D is going to be good outside the house. That's not a good sign for Big D when you start talking about, he'll be all right and he'll be fine. So they're talking about that. They're talking about that Big D probably has quite the following of followers. He'll have so much going on. He'll probably be America's favorite player, and things are going to be looking great for Big D when he gets out of the house. Big D will be fine. I do think he'll be fine. But we'll see. Azah and Xavier talking some more. Xavier saying that both essentially Xavier saying I'm stressed out. There's a lot of pressure on me that both my family and Big D's family are counting on me to win tonight. Which is, I guess that's true, right? Big D's family sure ought to be cheering for Xavier at this point over Azah to win tonight's competition. But he's saying, yeah, that's tough. I got two families cheering me on, Azah. Hoping I win this thing this evening. And there'll be a lot of people cheering for. I don't know what do y'all want tonight's outcome to be? Deservedly, if we can use such a word. I think Xavier ought to win tonight. Who wins second place? I don't care. But Xavier really probably deserves to win at this point in time. But for just pure entertainment value, an Azah win and watching her potentially taking Xavier over Big D could be interesting. So I don't know. I don't know what I want to see tonight. I don't know what I expect to see tonight. But I'm going to see it, and I'm looking forward to it. All right, with that, the lights out, or that lights that actually go out before maybe about 11:30 or so fairly early in the evening. Big D's in the Coral Room for a second night in a row. Azah and Xavier again in the Yacht Room, but it is an early evening, as at least two of them prepare this evening for the competition, and I suppose all three of them preparing for their jury speeches as well. Two of them will be giving them. One person will be listening to them and casting the final vote for this evening. And I'm so ready for it. All right, guys, that's it. I've had a blast this season. I thank all of y'all for the support. It means so much to me. I have fun doing it. It's a labor of love. So thank you. I may come back and do a recap video. We'll see. We'll see how everything goes this evening. But thank you. I appreciate it. Let me finish off with a big old SKD 143. Love my wife. Love my kids. I love my family, but I also love all the reality fans out there. I love all of y'all. Thank you for the support. Y'all have a good one. And tonight is finale night. Cheers, guys. Bye.